Welcome back to our channel World of Royals.
Did an Oscar-winning Hollywood legend just quietly shut the door on the Sussex brand? Imagine spending years building a global image based on royal mystery, Hollywood glamour, and carefully managed influence, only to have one of the most respected figures in the entertainment industry publicly signal that you're no longer welcome. And this wasn't just anyone. We're talking about Kevin Costner, an actor whose reputation in Hollywood has been built over decades. A man known for keeping a relatively low profile, avoiding unnecessary drama, and speaking only when he truly means something. So when his name suddenly became connected to a story involving Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, people started paying attention immediately. Because this wasn't a rumor coming from a British tabloid. It wasn't anonymous palace gossip. And it definitely wasn't speculation from social media. Instead, it sounded like something much more serious. It sounded like a clear message. A message that seemed to echo far beyond Hollywood. From the sunny coastal hills of Montecito all the way to the historic walls of Buckingham Palace. But here's the surprising part. The moment that sparked this entire controversy looked fairly small at first. It wasn't a heated argument. It wasn't a dramatic confrontation. Instead, it began during what should have been a perfectly normal charity event. The event was called the 1805 Live Benefit, held in Santa Barbara, an area known for its wealthy residents, luxury estates, and close connections to both Hollywood and high society. On the surface, it was exactly what you would expect from a high-profile charity gathering. There were celebrities, business leaders, influential figures from entertainment and media, and, of course, plenty of cameras capturing the evening. For Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, attending an event like this made perfect sense. Since moving to California, the couple has worked hard to establish themselves within elite social and entertainment circles. Appearances at high-profile charity events help reinforce their image as global philanthropists while also keeping them visible in Hollywood's most powerful networks. And this particular event had an added advantage. It was hosted at Kevin Costner's own seaside estate. For the Sussexes, standing beside a respected Hollywood figure like Costner would naturally send a strong signal. It would show that they were still deeply connected to the highest levels of American influence. But according to several people who attended the event, something about the evening felt slightly off. At first, it was subtle. Small details that most viewers wouldn't notice unless they were watching closely. Prince Harry appeared relaxed enough when he briefly joined Costner on stage to receive recognition for his charity work. He smiled. He thanked the organizers. Everything looked perfectly normal. But observers began noticing something unusual when it came to the interactions between Costner and Meghan. The warmth that usually defines Hollywood charity events seemed noticeably absent. Instead of friendly conversation or relaxed body language, there were short acknowledgments. Quick nods. Polite but distant exchanges. Nothing openly hostile. But definitely not the comfortable connection people expected. In elite social environments like this, body language can say a lot. And some guests described a quiet tension in the air, as if the two sides were maintaining a careful distance. At the time, most people brushed the moment aside. After all, large events can feel awkward sometimes. Not every interaction needs to be perfectly friendly. But looking back now, many observers believe that night may have revealed the first visible crack in something much larger. Because only a short time later, Kevin Costner would make it clear that this wasn't just a moment of awkward social chemistry. He would publicly signal that something had changed. And once that message reached the outside world, the story quickly began spreading far beyond a single charity event. What started as a quiet moment in Santa Barbara was about to grow into a much bigger conversation. A conversation involving Hollywood insiders, royal observers, and even political figures. But to understand why Costner's reaction carried so much weight, we have to look at something that had already been quietly circulating inside parts of Hollywood for years. Stories. Stories about ambition, networking, and the complicated ways people build influence in one of the most competitive industries on Earth. And those stories would soon become a very important part of this unfolding drama. To understand why Kevin Costner's reaction created such a strong response, we need to look at something that had already been quietly circulating in parts of Hollywood long before that charity event ever took place. For years, certain stories had been shared privately within the entertainment industry. These weren't explosive accusations or headline-making scandals. Instead, they were the kind of quiet observations that often pass between actors, producers, and executives during private conversations. The entertainment industry runs heavily on reputation. People talk. Experiences are shared. And over time, patterns begin to form in the way someone is perceived. According to several former industry insiders, Meghan Markle had developed a very recognizable approach to networking during her early years in Hollywood. Long before she became a Duchess, she was simply another actress trying to navigate an extremely competitive environment. Breaking into Hollywood is never easy. Thousands of actors compete for a limited number of opportunities. Success often depends not only on talent but also on connections, visibility, and strategic relationships. Because of this, attending industry events becomes a major part of an actor's career strategy. Charity galas, film premieres, networking dinners, and private gatherings are all places where important introductions happen. Many people who worked in the industry during the early 2000s remember Meghan as someone who took networking very seriously. One former studio executive once described her style as extremely focused. According to this account, her interactions often followed a specific pattern. First came the warm introduction. She would approach someone influential, often complimenting their work or mentioning a project they had been involved in. This created an immediate sense of friendliness and familiarity. Then came intense attention. People who spoke with her often said she had a way of making them feel like they were the only person in the room at that moment. The conversation would become very focused, very engaging. Finally, the discussion would gradually shift toward opportunities, possible collaborations, advice, introductions to other influential figures. In Hollywood, this kind of approach is not unusual. In fact, many actors are encouraged to develop strong networking skills. The entertainment business is built on relationships. There is even a common phrase in the industry for this behavior. It's called the hustle. Actors hustle for auditions. They hustle for introductions. They hustle for attention from casting directors and producers who might help open the next door. However, according to some accounts that circulated quietly within certain social circles, Meghan's approach occasionally felt more aggressive than some people expected. A few individuals reportedly described situations where the networking felt overly persistent. Others suggested that conversations sometimes moved quickly from friendly introductions toward requests for assistance or connections. Again, these were not public accusations. Nothing was officially documented. But in industries built on relationships and reputation, perceptions can matter just as much as facts. Once enough people begin sharing similar impressions, those impressions can slowly shape how someone is viewed within professional circles. At the same time, Hollywood itself was undergoing a major cultural shift. Over the past decade, conversations about personal boundaries, professional conduct, and power dynamics had become far more serious. The entertainment industry was forced to confront many uncomfortable truths about how relationships and influence had been handled in the past. As a result, many powerful figures became more cautious about their social and professional interactions. Behavior that might once have been dismissed as simple ambition was now sometimes viewed through a more critical lens. This shift in perspective may help explain why some of the quiet stories about Meghan's networking style began receiving renewed attention. And this is where Kevin Costner's reaction becomes particularly interesting. Costner represents a different generation of Hollywood. He built his career during an era when reputation, loyalty, and authenticity were highly valued within the industry. People who have worked with him often describe him as private, straightforward, and deeply protective of his personal boundaries. So when someone like Costner publicly signals distance from a particular individual, it naturally raises questions. Was this simply a personal preference? Or was it reflecting a broader shift happening behind the scenes in Hollywood? Because if influential figures in the industry were quietly reconsidering their relationship with the Sussex brand, the consequences could be significant. And just as observers were beginning to ask those questions, the story suddenly took an even more dramatic turn. Because during the same discussion, Costner mentioned a name that instantly changes the tone of any conversation. a name connected to one of the most controversial scandals of the modern era, Jeffrey Epstein. And the moment that name entered the discussion, everything changed. The moment the name Jeffrey Epstein entered the conversation, the entire story took on a completely different tone. Up until that point, the situation surrounding Kevin Costner's comments could still be viewed as Hollywood social drama. Awkward interactions at a charity event. Rumors circulating within the entertainment industry. A respected actor quietly distancing himself from a controversial couple. But Epstein's name carries a very different kind of weight. It is one of the most toxic associations in modern public life. The scandal surrounding Epstein destroyed reputations, ended careers, and forced powerful institutions to confront extremely uncomfortable questions about influence, power, and accountability. Because of that history, any public figure whose name becomes even loosely connected to the Epstein case immediately faces intense scrutiny. And the British royal family already knows this better than anyone. For several years, the monarchy has struggled with the fallout from Prince Andrew's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Photographs of the two men together circulated across the world. Flight records and witness accounts became the subject of global media coverage. Eventually, the controversy led to a massive legal settlement that effectively ended Prince Andrew's public role within the royal family. The scandal caused enormous damage to the monarchy's reputation. Public trust was shaken. Royal advisors spent years trying to contain the fallout and move the institution past one of the most embarrassing crises in its modern history. Because of that painful experience, Epstein's name has become something the palace treats with extreme caution. Even indirect references can reopen wounds the royal family would prefer to leave in the past. So when Kevin Costner mentioned Epstein while discussing the Sussex situation, the reaction from royal watchers was immediate. Not because he presented detailed accusations, not because he revealed new evidence, but because simply placing those names within the same conversation created a powerful and dangerous association. In today's media environment, associations can travel across the world within minutes. Speculation spreads rapidly. Headlines appear. Social media debates explode. And once a narrative begins forming, it becomes extremely difficult to control. Adding to the complexity was the fact that certain rumors had already existed on the outer edges of the internet for years. These rumors were never confirmed by credible investigations. They appeared mainly in obscure online discussions, conspiracy forums, and social media threads. Some claimed that Meghan Markle's name might have appeared in documents related to Epstein. Others suggested possible entries in contact lists or flight records. However, no verified documents have ever confirmed these claims. No official investigation has produced evidence linking Meghan to Epstein's activities. For a long time, mainstream journalists dismissed these stories entirely. They were viewed as internet speculation rather than serious allegations. But once a respected Hollywood figure suddenly referenced Epstein while discussing the Sussexes, the situation became much more complicated. Because when a rumor moves from anonymous online spaces into mainstream conversation, it immediately gains a new level of visibility. And that visibility creates pressure. Pressure on journalists to investigate. Pressure on institutions to respond. And pressure on the individuals involved to manage the growing public attention. Inside Buckingham Palace, royal advisors are known for monitoring global media narratives very closely. Their primary responsibility is protecting the reputation of the crown. The monarchy is not just a family. It is an institution that depends heavily on public trust, historical tradition, and global respect. At the moment, that institution is already navigating a fragile period. King Charles has been facing significant health challenges. The Princess of Wales has also been dealing with serious health concerns. As a result, the number of senior working royals actively representing the monarchy has become smaller than it has been in decades. During a time like this, stability is extremely important. The palace wants to avoid new controversies that could further damage public confidence. But when Epstein's name resurfaced in connection with the royal family, even indirectly, it raised serious concerns among royal observers. Because any suggestion of another link to that scandal would create enormous reputational risks. Some royal commentators now believe that this moment may have pushed the situation toward a potential breaking point. For years, King Charles has tried to maintain a delicate balance when dealing with Prince Harry and Meghan. But protecting the stability of the monarchy sometimes requires difficult decisions. And according to several experts, the palace may now be quietly reconsidering options that once seemed almost impossible. Options that involve a law written more than a century ago. A law designed for moments when royal titles themselves become a liability. The Titles Deprivation Act of 1917. And suddenly, that long-forgotten piece of legislation is being mentioned again. The Titles Deprivation Act of 1917 is not a law that most people hear about often. In fact, for more than a century, it has mostly remained a historical footnote, something mentioned in textbooks rather than modern political debates. But the reason this law is suddenly being discussed again is because of what it allows the British government to do. Under certain circumstances, it gives the Crown, with the support of Parliament, the authority to remove royal titles from individuals whose actions are considered harmful to the interests or reputation of the United Kingdom. To understand why this law was created, we need to go back to the early 20th century. During World War I, Britain found itself fighting against Germany in one of the most destructive conflicts the world had ever seen. But the situation inside the royal family was complicated. Many members of the extended aristocracy had strong connections to German noble families. Some even held titles linked to enemy states. As the war intensified, the British public began expressing anger about these connections. People questioned why individuals associated with enemy nations were still allowed to hold British titles. Political pressure grew quickly. In response, the British government introduced the Titles Deprivation Act. The law allowed Parliament to review the behavior of certain aristocrats and recommend that their titles be removed if their loyalty to Britain was in doubt. Several individuals lost their titles under this act during the war. After that period, however, the law was rarely discussed again. For more than 100 years it remained untouched, a legal mechanism designed for extraordinary circumstances, but rarely needed in modern times. Until now. Because the controversy surrounding the Sussex situation has caused some political observers to revisit the law. Not necessarily because action is guaranteed, but because the conversation itself has become more serious than before. In recent years, public opinion in Britain regarding Harry and Meghan has become increasingly divided. Some people continue to support the couple and admire their decision to step away from royal duties in order to build an independent life. Others feel very differently. Critics argue that the couple have repeatedly criticized the monarchy in interviews, documentaries, and books, while still benefiting from royal titles and the prestige associated with them. This criticism has created a difficult question for the monarchy. Should individuals who no longer perform royal duties continue using titles that represent the institution? Until recently, the palace appeared willing to tolerate this situation. Harry and Meghan stepped away from official duties in 2020, but retained their titles as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. For several years, the arrangement allowed both sides to avoid a complete and permanent break. However, public frustration in Britain has continued growing. Some members of Parliament have reportedly received increasing numbers of letters from constituents raising the same issue. Why should individuals who no longer represent the monarchy still hold royal titles? For politicians, this question creates a delicate political challenge. The British government traditionally avoids interfering directly in royal family matters. But when public pressure becomes strong enough, ignoring the issue can also become difficult. If Parliament were ever asked to consider action under the Titles Deprivation Act, the situation would become extremely sensitive. Taking such a step could appear dramatic or even vindictive on the global stage. But refusing to act could also make political leaders appear weak in the face of public frustration. This is why many experts believe any discussion of removing titles would require a powerful justification. Something that moves the conversation beyond ordinary family disagreements or celebrity drama. Something that frames the issue as protecting the reputation of the monarchy itself. Some observers now believe that Kevin Costner's comments, especially the reference to the Epstein scandal, may have unintentionally provided that kind of justification. Because the criticism surrounding the Sussex situation is no longer coming only from British media outlets. It is now appearing in conversations involving major figures from Hollywood as well. And when controversy begins crossing both sides of the Atlantic, the pressure on institutions can grow quickly. But while political discussions may be happening quietly behind closed doors, another development has started drawing attention. Something involving Prince Harry himself. In recent months, observers have noticed that Harry has increasingly been appearing at public events alone, without Meghan by his side. And those appearances have raised a new set of questions about what might be happening behind the scenes. While political discussions and media speculation continue to swirl around the Sussex situation, another development has quietly started attracting attention. Prince Harry has increasingly been appearing on his own. At several major public events in recent months, observers noticed something different. Harry was traveling solo, representing causes that have been close to him for many years. He appeared at events promoting the Invictus Games, the international competition he founded for wounded veterans. He attended charity programs connected to military support and humanitarian work. In some cases, he even returned to causes that defined much of his earlier public life, including campaigns related to landmine awareness and veteran rehabilitation. For longtime royal watchers, these appearances felt familiar. They reminded people of the version of Harry that the public once admired deeply. The soldier prince. The veteran who served in Afghanistan. The royal who used his platform to advocate for wounded servicemen and women. For many years, this role helped Harry build a strong and positive reputation both in Britain and internationally. But today, the situation surrounding him is far more complicated, because Harry now finds himself standing between two very different worlds. One world is the British monarchy, the institution that shaped his identity from birth. The family, the traditions, and the responsibilities that once defined his life. The other world is the new life he built in California alongside Meghan. A life centered around media production, business partnerships, and celebrity culture. When Harry and Meghan stepped away from royal duties in 2020, they hoped to build a new path that combined independence with global influence. And at first, that plan appeared to work. The couple secured major contracts with powerful companies, including large streaming and media deals. They signed agreements worth tens of millions of dollars to produce documentaries, podcasts, and other entertainment projects. These deals allowed them to create a completely new professional identity outside the traditional royal system. But the world of entertainment operates under very specific rules. One of the most important is reputation. Major companies protect their public image carefully, especially when partnering with high-profile figures. For that reason, many celebrity contracts include something known as a morality clause. A morality clause allows a company to end a partnership if the public behavior or reputation of the individual involved begins creating serious controversy. In other words, companies invest in a public figure's image, and if that image becomes too risky, they have legal ways to step away. This is why the recent controversy has caught the attention of many observers in the business world. When respected figures like Kevin Costner publicly distance themselves from someone, it can make corporate partners nervous. Executives begin asking difficult questions. Is the partnership still beneficial? Will audiences continue supporting projects connected to this person? Or has the controversy grown too large? Lawyers quietly review contracts. Public relations teams analyze media coverage, and companies begin deciding whether the partnership still makes sense. For Harry and Meghan, this situation creates a particularly delicate challenge. The Sussex brand has always depended on a unique balance. Part of its strength comes from the prestige of royal titles. Another part comes from access to Hollywood influence and media opportunities. If either side of that balance weakens, the entire structure can become unstable. And that is why many observers believe the moment we are witnessing could become a turning point. Because when powerful institutions begin reconsidering their relationships, whether those institutions are royal households, governments, or entertainment companies, the consequences can spread quickly. At the center of this story are two individuals who once stood at the intersection of royalty and global celebrity. Now they face a moment filled with uncertainty. Will the monarchy take stronger action? Will Hollywood continue supporting their projects? Or will the Sussex brand find a new path forward once again? For now, the answers remain unclear. But one thing is certain. What began as a quiet moment at a charity event has grown into a global conversation about reputation, influence, and the complicated relationship between royalty and modern celebrity. And as the world watches closely, the next chapter of this story has yet to be written. So what do you think? Is this controversy simply another chapter in a long-running royal drama? Or could it become a turning point for the Sussex story? Let us know your thoughts.